A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 158th edition of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Over 20 months ago, in April 2020, when the pandemic had just set in and schools had closed down, we at Notebook felt it was our duty to set up a platform for educators to connect meaningfully on, discussing problems we were facing with the rising need of digital education and online learning, and arrive at common solutions. Today, 158 episodes later, this platform has grown much bigger than we could have ever anticipated, all thanks to your love and support. We have discussed extremely curricular topics here like digital learning, NEP and assessments, extracurricular topics like sports and theatre, topics like school finance, and even evolved topics like mental health. Today, we take that discussion on mental health a little further because, frankly, the world cannot have enough emphasis on the mental health of our children. Our first speaker on this topic is Major General Neeraj Bali. Major General Neeraj Bali is an Indian Army veteran who served for nearly 4 decades as an infantry officer. His rich operational experience came from several tenures on the border, Jammu and Kashmir, the Northeast, and Africa. He has also been CEO of an education society running 92 schools and colleges with over 40,000 students on its rolls. Later, he was the CEO of an engineering company that supervised the construction of major infrastructure projects in India and abroad. He is a trainer and a global speaker. Currently, he is also teaching faculty of the Institute for Competitive Intelligence in Germany. He is the founder of Leadscape Advisors, a corporate leadership training company. An MSc and MPhil, he is also an alumnus of the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in the USA. He is also a certified life coach and leadership mentor. Sir, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for sparing your time. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Subhayu, and good evening to everyone. I'm not certain whether I'm going to speak specifically about mental health, but I presume what I have to say about counseling and guidance and adjustment will bring out certain principles that apply to all guidance and counseling, and I presume also to issues relating to mental health. Now, in the run-up to this particular event, when I got this invite from Gagori, I gave my school days a thought to recall which guidance and counseling worked the most for me. I also reached out to a few students who are currently in schools pursuing classes between 10th and 12th. So all I'm going to do is to tell you 3 stories. 3.5 actually, 1 from my own days and 2 from the days of contemporary students, which might give you insights into what I consider to be effective guidance and counseling leading to adjustment. Now, the first story is all the way back to 1970s, early 70s, when I was a student of class 9, and I came to face with this very threatening animal called geometry. Don't get me wrong, I was in an excellent section. I was in the best section of the school. I was academically sound, and that in fact complicated the problem. The problem was that that particular year, I joined the school cricket junior team, and if I may drop a name, I was in the exalted company of the great Kapil Dev. I also took part in dramatics, and I was an NCC cadet. Now, all these diversions and distractions took me away from my studies, and as a result, I missed out on the first few foundational classes of geometry. And you know what happens when you miss out on the initial basics? You lose the thread, and after that, everything starts sounding like Greek. And that's exactly what happened to me. Every day I would go to the class with great trepidation because whatever the teacher, Mr. Bansal, taught made no sense to me whatsoever. Now, when you're in a good section, when you've done well, you're very shy of really telling someone that you actually are pretty much close to zero inside. But I'm glad good sense prevailed. And one day I picked up the courage to confront Mr. Bansal in the corridors and tell him that I haven't understood a word of what you've taught. Mr. Bansal was surprised. He was a little angry. And then he gave me a piece of guidance, the methodology of which I have never forgotten. He said, I want you to buy a few notebooks, which should have about 30 pages, ruled notebooks, with a blank sheet on one side. They used to cost all of 20 paisa those days. And I want you to copy all the theorems, all the 25 that I've taught, and bring it to me tomorrow morning. So I went home and I sat down, and without bothering too much about scales and compass and so on, I went on to copy those 25 theorems. I presented it to Mr. Bansal the next day. He barely glanced at the notebook, and he tore it from one side just a little bit to make sure I didn't reuse it. And then he said, do this again tomorrow. I brought it again tomorrow. We had the same drill. And then this went on for over 2 weeks, where I would just copy and bring, and Mr. Bansal would scarcely look at it and then give it back to me. And then something magical happened. I began to get a hang of it. And in about 2.5 weeks or so, one day I sat down, and with a proper scale and everything else, I not only copied everything beautifully, I also beautified the notebook itself, like children do. And when I brought it back to him, he looked at it and said, I think you've begun to enjoy the subject. And then he tore it up again, and again, we repeated it. So I must have done this for, I don't recall, maybe 4 weeks. Now, the fact of the matter is that I eventually began to understand. Now, you might turn around and say, oh, this is just learning by the rote. What's so great about that guidance? I'm afraid I will disagree. The first lesson that I've learned, or the lesson from this first story that we can learn, is that you need to be creative when you give guidance. You need to specifically address the problem of the child, and not something which you've conventionally learned over the years, and to then parrot out the same thing to everybody. I suppose what Mr. Bansal's approach was that there are complex subjects or complex concepts that children of a certain age cannot grasp easily. For example, how many children have gone to a market and met Mr. Tan Theta or Mr. Cos Theta? They don't know what he looks like. So there is a time in your life when sheer repetition engraves everything in your mind, and then one day, as your mind expands, your intelligence grows, the penny drops, and in a flash, you understand what he really meant, what the theorem really meant. And I can assure you from this example that I did not look back in that particular subject. Now, the second story is about a Bengali girl, and let's call her Mimi. Actually, that's her house name. Now, Mimi has had several complex issues, psychological issues back home, where, as per her version, she's faced very difficult parents, even abusive parents, parents who have continuously let her down or demotivated her or said some very strange things which parents should never tell their children. And even over and above that, the relationships in the family have not been entirely wonderful. So Mimi, who's a serious, good student, her performance began to slip. She came under stress and anxiety, and she really didn't know who to turn around to, because this is hardly a thing that you can share with your friends. Finally, Mimi looked around and she reached out to a chemistry teacher, not her designated class teacher, mind you, and I'll come to that in a minute. The chemistry teacher, of course, had nothing to do, this has nothing to do with the subject of chemistry, unless you count relationships between children and parents as not having chemistry or having chemistry. She approached this teacher and she bared her heart. The teacher heard her most patiently. Mimi assures me that they had a conversation after school that lasted for 2 hours. At no point did she judge Mimi or point out on her own behavior or her own conduct. And at the end of these 2 hours, what Mimi remembers of the meeting is this. First of all, that she never criticized Mimi for her part of the problem. As a matter of fact, she did not even criticize her parents. She was listening. She was not jumping to any judgment. She was not pontificating. She was not lecturing her. And what surprised Mimi the most is that the teacher told her the stories of her own life. She told her some difficulties that every child faces, which she had faced too. And then she went on to convey a message which her father had taught her. And the message is brilliant in its simplicity. She asked Mimi if she knew what an ECG machine is, and Mimi knew. So she said, you know what? Life is like the readout that comes out of ECG machine. There are always going to be ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. That's normal. If your life has ups and downs, congratulate yourself because you're leading a normal life. If someday, like the ECG machine, the readout is a straight, flat line, you're dead. So don't panic. All children, indeed, most of the adults feel that life is not supposed to have difficulties. But life is meant to be difficult. And this passes. It always passes. And Mimi says, I came out feeling really good about this advice. Now, what are the lessons from this story for us counselors and people who give guidance? The first critical lesson is students will only approach you if you have the right persona to speak freely. I've seen this time and time again in the army. There are many officers who stand in front of Jawans and say, come to me if you have a problem. I'm like your father. We are like a family. And nobody ever comes to them. Because it's not sufficient to say that. You must cultivate a persona which is open, which is friendly, which is non-judgmental. And most importantly, one that is credible, that says, I'm authentic, I will solve your problem, or at least I'll help you solve your problem. And that's the reason Mimi turned around and approached a teacher who was not even her own class teacher. The second lesson of this is be non-judgmental. Sometimes, people only want to offload their problems. Children only want to talk about their problems. Sure, they're looking for solutions, but not necessarily that they will look for a solution immediately. They want to vent. And therefore, all you need to present initially is a friendly ear. Thirdly, stories are very powerful instead of conveying a laundry list of do's and don'ts. Most people don't want the repetition of well-known conventional wisdom. To tell a child, a stitch in time saves 9, all of that. Well, those sweeping statements may mean something. But most children, most people do not want to hear that. And cliches are never the answer to anybody's problems. And therefore, perhaps a story that resonates with the child, a story from your or somebody else's life, might convey a far better meaning than tons of data. And finally, simplify the message. Extremely important. I thought this story that Mimi told me about the ECG machine is brilliant. It just brings out the whole crux of life's experience in just one little story and one little episode. And finally, this comes from experts. Your guidance and your message should rarely exceed 3 points. Somehow human beings are attuned to understanding 3 points. And that's how you should go, rather than giving a list of 30, 40, or 20 points. Which brings me to my third point and the final point, and a final story. And of course, the lessons. This story is about an officer's child, Mudra, whom I've known since she was very small. She's a brilliant child, but she's a very quiet child, a very shy child. And as a matter of fact, when you prod her, she will tell you that she's utterly introverted to the point of being socially awkward. That's her words. All right. And in order to solve her problems, she's never approached a peer, leave alone a teacher. But like all people, like all brilliant people, you have problems. Her problems came to fore when she reached the class, when she was to enter class 11 and 12, because she was to select a stream and she had no idea how to go about doing that. The problem was that even though she was proficient in math, she didn't like the subject. She didn't want to be saddled with numbers all her life. So what she really wanted was biology. But she didn't want conventional biology either. When I asked her why not, she said, I didn't want to be a doctor. And she said this with a chuckle. I didn't want to be a doctor because, again, I would have to deal with people. So what she wanted to do was biotechnology. Now, the problem was there was no one to guide her on this part, whether biotechnology would make great sense or not. Expert after expert who came to her class in the Army Public School gave guidance on commerce and science and engineering and what have you, but no one ever spoke the subject of biotechnology. So finally, Mudra decided to look for somebody to guide, and she looked around, and finally she approached a teacher of a different class altogether, which again reinforces my point that people with problem, children with problem, will gravitate to someone who appears to have the persona of somebody who's competent and is willing to help and is going to be kind and gentle and non-judgmental. And children have a sense of instinct of guessing who it is going to be. So she approached this teacher and from a different class and asked her, was it lucrative to take on biotechnology? To her surprise, this teacher too had fiddled with biotechnology or learned biotechnology in her life. So she said, look, it's for you to choose. I'm not going to prescribe, but I'll give you some facts. This subject has not gained momentum in India as yet. Therefore, if you're really dedicated and passionate about it, you might have to give it some time. It may be a good idea to give it 2 years, study for 2 years, study biotechnology for 2 years, and then find out if that is the course for you. The fact is, unless you've done research in the subject, you're not likely to land a good job. And then, like the previous teacher, this one told a story of her childhood and said, you know what, while I'm not going to give you advice, what happened to me is that my family pushed me into learning something that I really wasn't too keen. I ended up as a PhD, but I always felt that that was not the way I should have pursued my dream. And that's all I will tell you. This 1 hour-long conversation cleared Mudra's head, and she is a biotechnology student. And I'm quite sure you'll hear her name and doing very well in the subject. What are the final lessons from this third story? If you have to be a guide, if you have to be a counselor, first of all, besides the persona, you have to understand the contemporary issues very well. Too many of us are outdated. Too many of us don't know how the new generation thinks. Too many of us are not into their music, their vibe, the way they spend their pastime. We only look at it in a kind of disdainful way, even mock it. The fact of the matter is, life changes so fast now that a new world is created every 3 to 4 or 5 years. And if you're outdated, then chances are that you are not going to be able to be a good counselor or a good guide. And when I say outdated, I mean both in profession as well as in social norms and behaviors that are prevailing. The second part is you need to have a growth mindset. Now, what it means is, when somebody approaches you with a problem, do not just focus on how that person is going to clear a class or achieve a certain rank, how it is going to win some award. Celebrate the effort that is involved. Try and make the person fall in love with the effort. Because if you're in love with the effort, you are going to succeed sooner or later. You're not going to rest your laurels. You're not going to rest on your laurels. You're not going to rest on your oars of your brilliance, so to speak. And the third lesson that again comes out from this is become a little bit of a storyteller. We all have stories in us. We look around and see how many things happen. Most people want to connect with you. Most people want things to resonate within you. And they don't want to hear, just like I said, a long list of do's and don'ts rattled off from some conventional wisdom or even from a book. And finally, keep your message simple. Right, that's the end of the 3 stories, and I promised you it's going to be 3.5. So I'm going to end with another one. This goes all the way back to the time when I was a 10-year-old. And this again will tell you the simplicity of the message. As a child, in class 5, I was suddenly nominated to become King Ashok in a play. You would recall the great King Ashok had fought in Kalinga, done a lot of bloodshed, the kind which is happening in Ukraine today. And when he got back, he was distraught. That was the play. When I was told, I was terrified, out of my skin. I didn't want to take part in the play. So I went to the teacher and said, I cannot become the king because I have a very thin, squeaky voice. I can't easily get angry. I can't speak loudly. I can't shout. How will I look like a king? So my teacher said, when you are the king, you never have to shout. When you are a real king, you never have to speak loudly. You don't have to glare at someone, because when you speak, everyone knows who's being addressed and everyone knows the king is speaking. So even when you become someone big in life, remember, stay courteous. And she said in her own language, courtesy is the privilege of the kings. I never forgotten those 5 or 6 words. Courtesy is the privilege of the kings. That's the beauty of simple, meaningful guidance conveyed in simple, if not simplistic, words. That's never left my being. I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. I'm really sorry I was speaking with my mute on. I'm sure all your advice and your wonderful stories passed on a very, very important message to everybody here. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker here is Mr. Philip Barrett. Mr. Barrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Barrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Barrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. And we at Notebook are privileged to have Mr. Barrett as our senior advisor. Sir, thank you so much for being here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Subayu. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, perfectly.
Thank you very much. And a very good evening to you and Achin and General Bali, Abhishek, Gagori, Meghna, and all those who serve this wonderful notebook team, and our esteemed panelists and our guests. When you compare schools of today to schools 10, 20, 40 years ago, things are very different. Does that mean that we were better off than kids today? Not really. I meet regularly, I meet a lot of people who are now in their 70s and 80s who extol the virtues of their tough education. And they sort of look down upon and scoff at the soft life that their grandchildren are leading by contrast. They talk about the canings that they got and other brutal punishments that they received, the Spartan food and Spartan living, how they put up with the cold weather, and at the same time they mock at today's children who are mollycoddled. They also lacked the emotional care that today's children have. For example, they'll talk about no one cared for their careers, and yet they do so well. And when they grew up, they had no one to turn to in school. And they just turned to the senior, a boy or girl who was 1 year their senior, who was grappling equally with emotional issues. And these men also go on to boast about how successful they have been despite the traumatic hardships that they faced in school. Little do they know how emotionally scarred they have become and how lucky they are that they have survived despite their Spartan schooling. One school that I know even researched to find that many of the marriages that their students go into don't last very long. And they were talking about how do we address a problem of these people cannot stay in a happy marriage. There's something about these students and the way they were raised in school that makes them almost emotional wrecks. and yet they will boast about their schooling. All of us carry childhood trauma, all of us, from things that happened to us when we were young. And they were not handled. They were not handled, and this affects the quality of our emotional lives much later in life. Many of the people of my age who scoff at the overprotected kids fail to see their warped and addicted lives that they lead and how it affects their family. One only has to ask their wives and children, and you'll get the answer. I think today schools have really made rapid strides into understanding a child's greater needs. Today, schools do not only cater to the 3 R's, but get involved in a plethora of activities that in days past, the joint family, the grandparents, and the supportive elders played. Now, we must not forget that the world we grew up in, the world General Bali grew up in, we are much more simple. Children today are facing the pressure of peer pressure, social media, the lure of fast money, the plethora of new jobs, the rise of commercialism and consumerism, fast foods, fast cars, the lure of colleges abroad, competitions for a few good colleges, grade inflations in the marks race, unemployment, and the most liberal sexuality these children live in, the easy acquisition of drugs and other substances, the bars and the clubs, the social media, the online shaming, the breaking up of the joint family and supportive family system, where parents don't have time for their children, unhealthy living, crowded cities. This is what our children today are facing. They are facing parental pressure, more demanding studies, larger class numbers, and a lack of real connection with their teachers, rising suicide rates, substance-related deaths, and a lack of real good role models and mentors. Now, the cases that General Bali mentioned, and so aptly done, those were the times when you had those type of teachers. I had many of these great mentors. Fortunately, in my life, I didn't need counseling. I didn't need a school counselor. These were the men and women who grew me up. The men that General Bali talks about, the women that General Bali talks about, people who could take time off their subject and devote time to the students' growth, emotional growth. Today, because today we have a minuscule amount of students who, a minuscule amount of schools who actually have any sort of counseling and guidance. They have special needs teachers, they have career departments, there is counselors and therapists, but how many schools today have this? Today, almost 12 to 14% of our children are suffering from some sort of emotional, mental problem, behavioral problems. And a very, very few schools actually have departments where you have specialized help. Now, most schools in the world, in the developed world, are way ahead of us. And we will really need to up our game in order to catch up and help our troubled kids. There are 3 people who are very important in today's schools. One is the school counselor or the therapist. And the other is the special needs educator. And the third is the career counselor. All are an integral part of the modern school system. As I said, 40 years ago, we didn't need them because our teachers filled these roles. They had more time on their hands. They didn't have such a marks race. Teachers were more relaxed and they could play this guidance role. Today, there is a lot more on a teacher's plate, and therefore the teachers don't have the time. So you have to get a specialized person. In fact, not one. Many schools have a whole team of therapists who guide students. I know that my sister headed a team of therapists for a leading school in the capital. And one day when she was walking down to the water taps, she encountered this girl who was on the verge of tears. And all that my sister did was to ask her if anything was wrong. The girl burst out crying, and later on it came to pass that she was on the way to the toilet to slit her wrists. It is just one question of how she was feeling, which made the girl felt seen, felt heard. Somebody saw that girl. Otherwise, in most cases, it would have ended in disaster. The therapist is an important part in school, an important player in today's schools. However, the second is the career counselor. Today, with the plethora of careers, such diversity, subject choices, different types of colleges, different aptitudes and skill sets, it is difficult for a simple teacher of my days, to prepare a student for the world ahead. And there is from psychometric testing to career advice to college admission procedure to preparing for the CAT and the CLAT and FitG. All this now is handled by a professional team that most schools have, the career guidance team. And the third, of course, is the emergence of special needs education. Today, we have realized that children have problems learning. From dysgraphia to dyslingua, there's autism, there's the whole ADHD spectrum. Children sometimes don't handle maths, language, and we give names to all these learning difficulties. And therefore, today, a teacher needs to be trained, or there is a special team of teachers who handle the special needs education. Every child with a learning disability has to have a learning plan that is overseen by this team. Now, as we know today, emotional needs and illness affects academic performance. The more a child is happy in school, the more a child is seen by the counselor, the more you ask questions like, do you have friends? Why are you walking alone? Why are you eating alone? Are you being bullied? These issues actually involve students who are not doing well academically. So any amount of emotional guidance and care is actually a good thing for to improve a student's academic ability. And again, today's students are far more stressed, as I mentioned. They are surrounded by a lot of more problems that we didn't face in our days. And into this scenario comes the counselor, whose job it is to help students through the swamp of adolescence and to make their existence more meaningful. Now, what I do find is that a lot of schools pay lip service to these three people, the counselor, the career counselor, and the special needs educator. If you really want something to work, you've got to make these three very visible and very important. You can't tuck them under the staircase, as I've seen happen in some schools. You've got to make them on par with every teacher in school. And it's got to be spoken about, and it's got to be open. Otherwise, if it's just another box that schools tick off, it won't work. So while I fully understand and I fully endorse the need for adult professional support apart from academics, I also have a feeling that maybe sometimes we have gone too far in overprotecting our children. We have this paranoia that, if you don't guide and, protect and save the children, they'll get lost. I think we adults have created a world for these young people. And now we have to get ourselves out of this mess by appointing specialists to do the job. Now, we have labeled so many learning disabilities over the years that we have prescription drugs for all of these. American kids are taking a lot of medicine because they have learning disabilities, and they're getting addicted to this. And because of this, our kids are not growing up resilient, self-directed human beings. In the days of Colonel Bali, and in my school days, we had formal games. We had people who could hear us and listen to us. We learned how to take disappointments. We learned how to brush ourselves up and stand up. We were not as mollycoddled as today's children. And so sometimes I feel that while you have the counselor, the guidance counselor, you also have to teach children the importance of resilience, which comes through learning to fail, learning to lose, learning to work as a team. We especially our boys are in serious trouble because our modern world has taken the wildness out of our young boys. There's a great book written by Robert Bly called Iron John, which talks and addresses the problem of today's boys. Today in our metro cities, boys are not growing up to be boys. Our men are missing. The mentors that General Bali talked about, the mentors I had, they're missing. Teachers are too busy, parents are too busy. There's absence of fathers who develop their sons. So while we do need the school counselor, the career department, and the special needs educator, we do need them to provide this holistic education. We also need to help our children stand on their own feet and be more resilient. In the school I last worked, in the grade school, we had a wellness department, full department, where it was not only the school hospital, there was also a physiotherapy department, there was a dentist chair, there was an X-ray machine, which took care of the physical and the medical side. We also had 2 therapists, 2 counselors. We also taught life skills. There are schools abroad who teach a wellness program, a happiness program, teaches you how to keep happy. There's mindfulness. Many schools use the Thich Nhat Hanh mindfulness. So I think that apart from doing well in studies, apart from all the lovely things that schools offer, it is imperative to look at mental health, which keeps children happy, keeps teachers happy, because even teachers suffer from mental health issues, which affects their teaching. So I'll end here. I cannot emphasize in a better way the need for extra help to guide our children through their difficulties. Thank you very much, and over to you, Shubhai. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. Between you and General Bali, I think we have such a wonderful sense of where our children need to be and what kind of counseling and guidance is so very necessary right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a panel discussion and we have some really eminent panelists for you, people with decades of experience in education. However, before we go on to the panel discussion, a little bit about us here at Notebook. We at Notebook are an EdTech platform. We create short videos pertaining to the school curriculum. What this means is you would find a video for every topic of every subject, right from classes 1 through to class 12 of the CBSE curriculum, if you visited our website and mobile apps. Now, these videos come in handy in 2 cases. One is when you as a teacher are about to start teaching a new topic. You could play a short video. These videos are 6 to 10 minutes long to kind of give your students a visual introduction to the topic that you're about to teach. Also, the students have access to the same videos on their personal devices. Whether it's a laptop or a smartphone or a desktop, whatever they have at home, they can watch these videos as many times as they want until they get a good grasp of the topic that you are teaching. What I'm going to do now is play a mashup of some short notebook videos before we go on to the panel discussion that we have.
क्षण मनुष्य अपने गंतव्य पथ पर थका हुआ नजर आ रहा है, वह उसकी हिम्मत बढ़ाने के लिए कहते हैं कि तू कभी थक नहीं सकता, तू कभी रुक नहीं सकता। तात्पर्य यह है कि यदि मनुष्य थक के बैठ गया तो उसे कभी भी
This is Chitragupta, the accountant of gods. Mythology says that he is the assistant of Yama.
The king, Louis XVI, had come to power in 1774 at only 20 years of age. He was inexperienced and was married to the Austrian princess Marie Antoinette. The king helped the 13.
At the age of 12, he went to school to learn the Hindu scriptures. 4 years later, he returned home, married a princess and had a son. At the age of 25, Prince Siddhartha came in contact with the sufferings of the world when he went out for hunting.
Wow! Let's go to the mitochondria now. It provides energy for everything you do throughout the day. Next is the nucleus, the brain of the cell. This is where
Edison was curious about a hen which was sitting on its eggs. His mother told him that chickens would hatch from the eggs. Edison was a funny boy and he wanted to hatch some eggs himself. He sat on a dozen eggs, but of course he could not hatch them.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that were short snippets from some notebook videos. If you opened our website, www.notebook.school, or visited our mobile apps for Android and iOS, you would find more than 10,000 such videos at your disposal. Well, it is now my privilege to introduce the wonderful panelists that we have with us today. We are privileged to have with us Mr. E. Jayaganapathy, who is the principal of Amrita Vidyalayam Senior Secondary School in Nagapattinam, Tamil Nadu. Sir has over 28 years of experience in CBSE, IB, and IGCSE, as well as metric boards as teacher, IB coordinator, principal, and senior principal. Sir, thank you so much for making the time to be here today. It's a privilege to have you. We also have with us Mr. Haridas Mukherjee, who is a well-known educationist and presently working in a government college in West Bengal. Mr. Mukherjee worked in India and abroad since 1994 as an academic coordinator, curriculum designer, mentor, and teacher for CBSE, IGCSE, and IB curricula. He served as a professional counselor and freelance resource person for career counseling, motivational speaking, psychological counseling, new age parenting, and as a social activist and mentor for teachers' orientation programs in various Indian schools and international schools. He also works as a content writer, a freelance academic auditor, and assessor of well-known schools. Mr. Mukherjee holds various master's and bachelor's degrees, along with certificate and diploma courses from India and abroad. He is an alumnus of various prestigious national and international universities, like University of Cambridge, UK, IIM Kozhikode, Kerala, IB Netherlands, British Council, IDP Australia, and many more. He has received many awards and honors from various national and international institutions along his journey. He is also an honorary life member of the Indian High Commission or Indian embassies situated in many countries. Sir, thank you so much for being here today. It's a privilege having you. We also have with us Mr. Madhusudan N, who has over 30 years of experience as a school principal. He started his journey as a school principal with the Little Angels Public School back in 1997, then went on to lead the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's Gandhi Vidyashram CBSE, the Mahatma Gandhi International School CBSE, and the BVM Global School at Trichy Senior Secondary School CBSE, before joining Maharishi Vidya Mandir in 2020. He has received the Best Principals Award by Rotary Club and he's ensured 100% pass in board examinations every year. He has attended several principals national conferences and also hosted the Bhavan School Principals Conference in 2005. He has helped the CBSE in conducting various competitive examinations, board examinations, and cluster level volleyball tournament. He's also brought out a book titled Teaching Methodology Exchange. He's inspected various schools regarding regulatory requirements and submitted reports to CBSE for affiliation. He's also been an NIOS coordinator and has good knowledge of both CBSE and the NIOS systems. He holds a Master of Science from Annamala University and a Master of Education also from Annamala University. So thank you so much for being here today. It's a privilege to have you. I shall stop my share now and start the video. I would also request all three of you to kindly start your videos. Mr. Jayaganapathy, Mr. Madhusudan, and Mr. Mukherjee. If you could please unmute yourself and begin your videos.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Very good evening.
Good evening, sir. Without wasting much time, sir, Mr. Jayaganapathy, if I may start with you. A quick start to the question. What are some of our experiences with counseling in schools, especially over these last 2 years?
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. This is Jayaganapathy from Nagapattinam. It's basically a coastal area, and they have already seen this terminologies like guidance, counseling, adjustment, everything because of this tsunami. You must have heard about it, and the children, those who have been a victim of this particular thing, as now they are in grade 11, 12, and all. So they have already undergone a lot of counseling, guidance, and adjustment program. Now, for the last 2 years, we have seen terrific things. In fact, everyone in our family, in our Vidyalayam, we could see a lot of difficulties in them, especially academic achievement, as well as getting along with the system, because you must have experience, and throughout the world, they must have experience. Being people from a below poverty line, we had a lot of issues over here also. In fact, actually, it helped them a lot as they have already undergone these type of issues, but it is entirely new approach for them. That's the only thing they had. Anyhow, we could manage it very easily through certain areas. We have divided everything. Even during the online classes, we have divided everything into various parts. Especially teachers were given a lot of assignments, as well as the parents were also invited. During the class itself, we have given certain practices like yoga and other thing and all. And it helped them a lot. And basic exercises, that too helped them a lot. And when they came to the school, that time only we realized that, especially when the transition from online to offline, that time only we realized how it made a big change in that. So it worked out very nicely, and things are moving on smoothly. We could give enough adjustment program for them. Especially we have categorized everything, whether it is achievable, what are all the barriers stopping them in that, and also we could see what are all the areas they can focus, and it worked out very nicely. So it's going on now. For the last 2 years, almost, it's a new experience. Even then, we do all those things.
Thank you, sir. It's been a new experience, to be honest, for everyone, I guess. But particularly the teachers, the way they have coped with these 2 years and ensuring that students don't find a gap in their education is something that we take our hat off to every session that we have. Thank you so much for that.
That is true.
Mr. Mukherjee, if I may come to you. So we are talking about counseling in schools. And since you are currently teaching in a college, so we would ask you for your overall take on how did you see the situation vis-a-vis mental health and counseling for school students for the last 2 years?
Yes, exactly. It's a very good question. Thank you, Mr. Suvayu. First of all, I want to give you the congratulation that you have chosen very nice topics, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to appear before you. Thank you. The thing is that as you know very well that it's my 27 years of teaching and learning experiences now, and I have worked in various national and international countries. 11 countries I have visited. I have worked there. So mainly as being as a counselor, as a mentor, as a teacher, as an educationist, the first thing I have focused that is the mental health issues. That is the most important part. If a student cannot control the mind itself, it's a very big problem for the parents even. So parents would have to give that type of idea, that type of coaching, which is, you may say, that type of exercise and health awareness would have to that type of guidance they need so that they can increase and they can control the mind. That is the first important part. And for that reason, proper food is also a matter. So I have observed, in my point of view, within 27 years of teaching experience, I have observed that 50% of happiness comes from the genetically determined. It is from the genetically determined issues for the students or the children, those who are facing mental health problem or mental issues. And 10% are coming from external issues. And so 50 and 10 means 60% it is covered, and 40% under our control. That is the most important issues, which is connected with international some international activities, exercise, voluntary work, gratitude, sustainable happiness. And happiness department, my previous speaker, Mr. Philip Burrett and Major General Bali also mentioned that wellness center, which can be the main resource of a counselor, that wellness center and the counselor must have to present nowadays in each and every schools. Or there should be some organizations a school can hire for the psychometric test, for the mental health healing, workshop, or emotional. And as because I have worked in many countries with and as a freelance motivational speaker as well, so the health and emotional and mental support is the most important thing, and the mental well-being also a most important matter. So in related to this, I have observed, just my previous speaker, Mr. Principal sir told that, and Mr. Major General also told that nowadays students are too much vibrated now. The what do you call, the aura and the vibration within him is so much dynamic. They are thinking in a nutshell, you can say they are trying to cover various topics. One parent wants to what do you call, his child be a good painter, good writer, good poet, good listener, good narrator, good scientist, good doctors, like means each and every subject should have to get, he should have to get a 90 above percent. That is the pressure we are giving, the parents they are giving. Means my son or my daughter is the best in our locality or in our society. These pressures and the comparing with other children. Please look after these things. His son got a 95%. Why not you? His daughter has got like this. So this comparing is the another most destructive way of counseling by the parents. Nowadays it is happening. And nowadays the teachers are making our classrooms it's not spontaneous. It's like one way teaching that should be totally changed. It should be flipped classroom. Means students and teachers should have a good relationship so that they can share their problems, their ethos, their ethics, their values, their mental pressure, their domestic problem, what they are facing, their psychological pressure, what they are facing. Everything they should have to share with the teachers or in the school. Sometimes we have seen in India, not only in India but also other countries, I have seen also the bully. That is also another part. This bully means children, means students. Bullying is the most destructive part in our education system. Nowadays, the Finland, it has totally removed. Nothing is there. So, and now for this reason, I have seen, you can say that the body language of the students, sometimes this bully is totally giving a very emotional and the psychological traumatic condition to other students, those who are facing. So in this regard, a principal or some teachers should have to take initiative. And just few days before, I had another seminar. I was discussing what should be the teachers' enhanced role during the post-COVID period. Nowadays, maximum students have got suppose 90% through online examination, and they are thinking that they are the biggest bull like that. But it's not like that. The online 90% marks or maybe average of various you can say semester examination, when they have sum up, it comes near about a good percentage. But actually he has not or she has not directly not learned a very good knowledge on that subject. So this is the biggest weakness on drawbacks in this regard. That type of students will face big problem when they will come offline examination or offline assessment. That will be biggest problem. In this regard, teachers should have to shoulder some extra responsibilities. So in this way, we can support the if you ask me what are the extra responsibilities or teachers should have to take in to improve the mental health or emotional health or conditional behavior, what is happening in the classroom. The thing is that teachers can bring the change. Teachers can bring pull out the students directly with the practical and theoretical knowledge once at a time in the classroom, so that they can feel good and they can learn a lot with some laugh. The laughter and laugh, they are forgetting nowadays due to the pressure of the what do you call society and the school and the parents. So students are forgetting the laugh. Nowadays, if 5 students are sitting in a bench in a park or anywhere, 5 persons means 5 students, they are doing the mobile. That is the biggest problem. They are not sharing their thoughts, views, and everything. Each and everyone is doing like this. That is the biggest problem. And teachers had to quickly reimagine the human connection. I am telling about that human connection, that human touch is must have to be it. That is most important thing. And teachers would have to be updated with that technology on that subject and topics. I have seen lots of things. Teachers are also learning from the students. At that time, they should not have to feel very embarrassing situation. No, not that. Because after the generation, when we have learned, when we have given our Madhyamik, means 10th standard or 12th standard examination, at that time, the education system was totally different because Google has not, present. Nowadays, the post-Google generation, that is a totally different generation. So you should have to feel in a different way.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Just to one of your points, sir. So Together for Education as an initiative, we have started back in 2020. This is the 158th episode, and we've connected with over 1 lakh teachers in the process. And our learning over these 2 years has been so many schools have put in place initiatives where the special needs educator or the school counselor has taught other teachers how to also become counselors. So most teachers have also kind of taken that role on.
Very recently on these topics only, I had given a webinar, through webinar, I had made a teachers orientation program in a school of Madurai. Just I have given a training to the teachers. Yes.
Wonderful, sir. Mr. Madhusudan, sir, if I may come to you next. Sir, your experience, good evening, sir. Your experience with counseling in your school in the last 2 years.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Team Notebooks, for giving me an opportunity to interact with good people who have been serving the society in way of imparting quality education. I'm very glad to know that you have come up with videos. So when it comes to that question, the point, our experience with counseling, so especially in the last 2 years. So the major shortcoming was lack of personal touch. So in the last 2 years, the counselor as well as students could not meet physically in the classroom situation or resource center. So they were able to interact with each other through online mode. When such interaction takes place, the students are not able to share their feelings, emotion. Even the teacher could not get what the students think out when they are staying at home. And apart from that, students are under stress. The reason is there is lack of social interaction. So everybody say, most of them say that the students come to school for the sake of gaining knowledge. From my point of view, the school provides opportunity to interact, opportunities to students to interact with each other. The interaction only plays a vital role to learn many things. So we can learn certain things from either from the Google or notebooks or textbook. But the thing is, the real learning comes when they interact with the people. So our earlier speaker also, Mr. Mukherjee, said that, so when the friends meet in the park or in a mall, so instead of talking to each other, they keep on fiddling with the mobiles. So if you have such a kind of interaction, what happens? The communication between the friends or even the students missing. So when they miss such a kind of opportunity, the students may not be able to develop their own personality. And the technology has drastically changed day-to-day life. The students have become susceptible to new risk involved. So addiction to gaming, social media, and then online communication with the strangers. Even many do not know with whom we are interacting. So as a result, it leads to a lot of confusion and stress. Even the parents may not be able to guide. So when it comes to another point, whether the schools are doing enough. So every school tries its best. So schools are trying to do, but the thing is, it is not sufficient. It is not enough. Why it is not enough? One is when we move from the physical class to online mode. So as I said earlier, the lack of personal touch. And another thing is sometimes the parents and the counselors are not able to meet the expectation of the students. Sometimes even the counselor may not be able to bring out what the students have in their minds. They are struggling, and there is no motivation within the students also to do better, or not in terms of mark, in terms of excelling in the work or the choice of work the students have chosen. Then next thing is in the rural areas. When it comes to rural areas, the qualified counselors are not available. So sometimes in the cities, of course, in Chennai, Madurai, or in Coimbatore, so there are people. But the thing is, even when it comes to rural area of Tamil Nadu, there is a shortage of counselor. And one more aspect is that the parents are expecting quick solution to every issues faced by the students. So today, there is no such a kind of solution to any problem. So it is everything can be resolved over the period of time. So of course, today the speed plays a vital role. So every second there is a change. So the child has to cope up. So when the child faces such a kind of uphill task to face the challenges, changes, so it is better to guide the students right from the beginning. That means when they reach one adolescent stage, so naturally they need some kind of counseling. There is another point also. So previous generation, so had no such a kind of privilege to have a counselor or anything. Why they could not have, or why previous generation could not require such a kind of counseling? The reason is very simple. The joint family system played a major role. So when child suffered from some kind of issues, the child could go to mother, father, aunt, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, so on. So as a result, somewhere the child was able to find a solace to his issues or emotional feelings. But today in a nuclear family, when both are employed, mother and father are employed, so naturally, so there is no opportunity for the child to share. So in such a case, today the counselors are highly essential in the school, whether the school is run in the cities or in the rural areas. So they have to do a lot of work to guide the students in a proper way. Then the one more issue is there. So what is that? So we are all now materialistic. So we want to buy many things. So many things are available in the market. So that we feel like having more and more. So when we feel like having more and more, naturally we are going to have more pressure on us to meet out our expectation. Then money is required. When the money plays a vital role, then it takes everybody into big trouble. So therefore, so in a sensibly we want to guide the students. The school needs to have the professional, well-trained counselors and remedial teachers. Apart from that, career counseling, there is another area. There also we need to have a specialized people. Then here, one more point is there, the aspiration and expectation. There is a big gap between these two. So the parents also expect so much from the students. And the meantime, child also wants to achieve something. Then in such a case, when these two do not match with each other, then it leads to depression. So the child feels that the child is not able to do much. So when such a situation comes, again, child faces a lot of challenges. As a result, there is every possibility for the child to go in a wrong direction. So it is better to have a qualified teacher, a qualified counselor in the school, so that they are able to address the various issues faced by the students. So once again, I think I have covered almost all the points. Thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for addressing all of those talking points. In fact, some of them I would also ask the other two panelists just to comment on. Jayaganapathy, sir, if I may come to you. Sir,
Yes.
we have spoken about counseling for a very long time, right? Counseling is something that gets discussed a lot of times, but overseas, we are seeing three distinct streams. There is counseling, there is guidance, and there is adjustments, right? In India, somehow we have clubbed all three into one. Do you think the West has overdone this a little bit by trying to create two thin slices, or do you think India needs to catch up to that system?
Yeah. Basically, these things are almost interrelated, guidance, counseling, and as well as adjustment. Now, the problem is guidance and counseling will be really helpful to know the situation and other thing and all. Just giving that adjustment is a big thing, whether it is possible. Unless otherwise we have proper empathy, it's really a difficult task for the people to go with the thing. Now we need to have, as our Madhusudan sir said, as well as Mukherjee sir was mentioning, we need to have a proper counselors who has a lot of empathy, and also they need to know the resources, available resources, so that they will be able to guide them in such a way that they will be able to point out, they will be identify the issues, and then they will be able to take this or assign this particular thing to them. And now actually we have just started certain things during the online classes. We have just started called monitoring report. Means each and every teacher was assigned. They were assigned with certain duties. They need to monitor individually. Each and every child needs to be monitored based on their how they are achieving goals and other thing and all. And the parents help in this regard, and their moods during the classes and other thing and all. And what are all the identified issues, whether it can be resolved or not, or something like that. So like that, they have justified, means identified all those things, and made a record of that one. And it will be monitored every month, weekly or fortnightly or monthly. It will be monitored, and based on that, the solutions were given. And also everything were analyzed, whether the problem was resolved or not. At the same time, what are all the barriers stopping this achievement area? Why this is continuing? Whether we are having the resources which is supposed to be given like that. And not only on their educational side, even on their health issues, even on their socio-economic conditions, everything were looked into this one. So by this methodology, in fact, actually, it started working, in fact, but still, it's a long process. Means we cannot just say that within one particular period of time it can be achievable or not and all. So based on the individuals, it varies, but we are collecting only those people, especially those who need more and more issues, more and more concentrate. Actually, these things were monitored, and we are trying to do that one. Again, whether they are mentally balanced or emotionally balanced, or all these things are checked up everywhere. So based on this, and with the parents' help, this can be achieved. But still, now, as on today, I don't think it is fully achieved. It is going on. It's a long time process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Just glad to hear that the process has started, because this is something very important, right? Because now you're looking at the student in totality. The student has a pupil of certain subjects, but also as a function of the socioeconomics, the mental state, everything that goes on around it. It's a beautiful system. In fact, I think the NEP talks about a 360-degree scorecard. This is perhaps a further evolved system of the 360-degree scorecard. Mr. Mukherjee, sir, if I may come to you next. Barrett, sir, in his initial address was talking about mollycoddling. Now, we understand that counseling is important, guidance is important, adjustments will have to be made. But where is the thin line at which point the amount that we handhold somebody becomes a crutch rather than just a support?
Okay, that is the most important question. Very nice and touchy thing. Before going to the counseling part, Hello, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Before going to the counseling part, I will suggest, before going to the counseling part, to the student particularly, I will suggest that arranging a frequent parent-teacher meeting, because now I have observed that a student staying at the school for 6 hours or maximum 7 hours, right, out of 24 hours. So 18 hours or 17 hours he is staying at home, but we are blaming to the school. Now see, my son is learning this, or my daughter is doing this, or if anything happening, first of all, the society will put a big finger that from which school he is a student, or she belongs to which school. So that means the name came first the school from. They are not taking the name of the parents. They are not taking anything else. The thing is that a parent is the first teacher. And if we jointly can take this initiative, so that's why wherever I have worked, I have given my suggestions and advice and requests to the school head or the principal that frequent parent-teacher meeting is the most important part, which can decrease the gap of this what you call emotional balances, and it should be well ordered and disciplined way to the life, which is more important at home. So parents counseling is the first, then the student counseling is coming. So in regard to the mental health, just my previous speaker, the sir, told already that nowadays students and other they are very much acquainted with lots of social networking sites. Why? What is the reason behind it? We will have to find out the reason, then we can cure it. It's not like a disease, just give this medicine, he will be cured. No, the thing is that for permanent healing, the thing is that you should have to go, a teacher should have to go, or a principal or counselor should have to go to the root of the problem, why it is happening. Then we can take a decision that for that reason, a boy or a girl, means what do you call, son and daughter, can take a different type of what do you call, remedy, or you can say the healing parts. And also a counselor after counseling can give the best medicine, means best guidance to the parents, what exactly he needs or she needs, or what is actually he or she is suffering. And my previous principals have already told that nowadays this society is totally a materialistic. I have seen a few years before in Kolkata, there was an accident. A student of Saint, I think I don't want to take the name of a famous school. That student has given a laptop to the teachers to get the best marks. You can see what is happening in this society. So at that time, that this materialistic world, who has given, who has presented this materialistic world to that student? We, the teachers, the educators, the society has given. So teachers would have to be more vigilant, more caring, to look after the students. Either they are habitually doing these things, means it is their habit, or what habitat they belongs to. If they learn that his father or mother is doing these things, automatically they will also think that I can do. What is the problem? So parents should have to take initiative along with the teachers as well as the counselors, that this is the problem. It is a general problem of all surrounding students. Nowadays, it is a drastic, you can say, it has been spreaded drastically. This stress and emotional imbalances and psychological problem and in trauma, it is a it's a disease, big disease nowadays. So if you see a child or a student is going every day to the school nicely and coming nicely, no neatly, but psychologically he is very shy and calm and cool, but when he will be vigorous accent or vibrant, he will show or she will show, you don't know. So what is happening? It is just like a volcano, one day it will evolve. So that's why we should have to be think in a different way, and we should have to touch the student's heart along with the parent support. We can make a bridge to shorten the gap of, and we can easily, I think, sort out the problem of the present day's students, what do you call, situations or the emotional imbalances. That is the thing. So parent-teacher meeting along with the teachers, it is the most important part. We can take care of the students nicely. That is the thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. To all three of you, thank you so much for sharing your views. I hope you'll stick around because we want to do a summary right at the end. But for now, it is my privilege to introduce the next speaker that we have today. We have with us Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, a fellow of the ICAI, and a member of CPA Australia and CPA Ireland. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really sorry I'm traveling and because of, I think, network issues, we'll just keep the audio and not be able to switch on the camera. So one of my colleagues, team members had tuned into the webinar and I was listening to all our esteemed speakers. So one thing I must say that, indeed at Notebook, we feel privileged. We are indeed humbled. The kind of passion that we see in our esteemed educators, in our panelists who come and share their wealth of experience, the kind of intellectual thought leadership and the practical perspective. So each and every point that all of you made, I must say that it comes in with years and decades of experience. And that is the whole objective behind Together for Education webinars, this peer-to-peer mentoring, ensuring that we're able to connect this centers of excellence, ensuring that we're able to bring like-minded educators under one umbrella. The other day, I was incidentally one of my educator friends brought something to my notice, and I saw that when we started this webinar, we had never even imagined the kind of scale it would achieve. The other day I was just seeing that some schools, different states of India, and so more than one, quite a few schools, they have started keeping record of number of webinars that their teachers are attending, principals are attending, educators are attending, and they're actively encouraging their teachers, educators to come and attend these webinars. So indeed, when we see things like this, we indeed feel a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment. That is the whole objective. And I think some very beautiful points that I heard today, including very importantly, the role of parents and how this entire cohesive ecosystem works. So, and the role of each and every stakeholder, be it parent, educators, counselors, and the role of larger society. Role of parents teachers meeting, the need for interaction. And this particular topic is so important and it's so delicate. And today, considering the kind of galaxy of speakers, so I thought that I'll keep my intervention to minimum. I think wonderful discussion, very, very free-flowing and passionate discussion we had today. And I'm sure that the topic is so vast, so huge that even a full day session is not enough. But I indeed thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Indeed, at Notebook, we are humbled. So, so I think we were having a great discussion. I would not like to interrupt and hold back for a longer time. I thank all of you again. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for your quick intervention. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for me to thank all the speakers that we've had and also try and summarize the wonderful things, actually do a quick recap like we do on Notebook of whatever they said. First of all, Major General Bali, thank you so much for sparing the time to be here. I know we had kind of got his times wedged between two meetings, and we are really grateful that he could afford us his time. Those 3.5 stories taught us some very important lessons, and I'm sure we will remember them for years to come. Thank you, sir. Mr. Barrett, sir, thank you so much. I think this was one of the very few occasions where you were the second batsman and somebody else played the opening knock. Otherwise, you are our opener of choice. But sir, I think your years of experience become most evident when we talk about aspects related to student psychology. And today was one such instance where, sir, the amount of depth of understanding you have of student psychology, how people think about various things, the need of counseling, and also the need of a family standing by, giving them just the time of the day, and ensuring that the family is with them throughout through in all of their endeavors. That importance, sir, I think is our main takeaway from what you told us. Thank you so much for being here today and sparing your time with us.
Thank you, Shabayu.
You're welcome, sir. Mr. Jayaganapathy, I think the monitoring report is a beautiful tool that you've implemented in your school. If possible, please do send us more details about that report so that we can disseminate it to the 3,000 plus schools that we are connected with. And I think that that's a initiative that I'm sure a lot of schools would love to take up. So thank you so much for making time to be here today. Mr. Mukherjee, thank you so much for highlighting the importance of the entire social system, the structure, parents, teachers included, in ensuring that students are not mollycoddled too much. At the same time, they get the counseling, the guidance, and the adjustments that they deserve. Such an important thing to know where those fine lines are. And if the students are guided both by their parents as well as their teachers, nothing like it. Thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Mr. Madhusudan, thank you so much for your valuable input, sir. I think what you said, particularly about the gap between expectations and aspirations, will stay with most of us, particularly me, for a very long time. We often tend to mix up those two. And when we do, it obviously leads to disaster and creating unnecessary pressure on an individual. And if people are more mindful of that gap, I'm sure that will go a long way in ensuring that our students, our young ones, are keeping themselves in the perfect mental balance. Thank you so much for spending the time to be here today. To the wonderful audience that we've had, you're welcome, sir. To the wonderful audience that we've had, thank you so much for being here today, for being with us week after week. It's been always a privilege to bring such eminent speakers over to you. Until we meet the next time, we wish you well, we wish you take care, stay safe, and goodbye. We shall see you on our next session.
Thank you.